illegal, undocumented Guatemalan Tether unalives a 19-year-old FBA sister in Maryland by the name of Dacara Thompson. And I mean, this Tether threw our sister's body over a bridge. She was found naked, which means sadly and unfortunately that this sick-minded Tether SA'd our sister more than likely, which is a bunch of nonsense, you know what I mean? And this is why we as foundational Black Americans ain't getting out here and putting the capes on for people in terms of that mass deportation thing. Because a lot of these damn Tethers, when they get over here to America or our homeland, they take up an anti-FBA stance on things. And you could bet your last damn dollar that even though the news media outlets ain't putting it out there like that, this case has a racialized component. This damn no good Tether done this because our sister was Black. This is why we in America need to stop that whole, mass immigration thing, where we letting all of these damn individuals into our country. We need to up security at the borders to ensure that these, people ain't, getting over into our country like that, and if we're going to allow immigration, which, they ain't never going to stop immigration, but it got to be done in low numbers and people must be properly vetted because we don't know who the hell we getting over here. They letting all of these damn people in all willy-nilly, you know what I mean? And we ain't getting, upstanding citizens that, they weren't upstanding. These people weren't upstanding citizens for the most part in their homeland. We getting, criminals, so on and so forth, So the news media outlets, is being very vague and tight-lipped about, all of the intricate details surrounding our sister's death, you know what I mean, as to, not let, information get out there to the public. What's being said is that our sister, willingly, entered a vehicle that this Tether was in. And, I ain't, believing that. I ain't buying that. You know what I mean? Because ain't no sister just going to go up to no vehicle to where though she don't know the person. My question I'll pose is, was she forced into that vehicle? You know what I mean? Our sister was only 19. So could she have been manipulated? And they keep, seeming to want to focus on, where our sister was unalive was in a house, a house of this Tether's family, his cousins, and how them Tethers live, all 50 and 60 people, from a family, living in one single household, you know what I mean? So he was living in a household, with multiple of his family members, you know what I mean? And they say our sister was unalived in the bedroom, and some, one of his cousins, he reported hearing a female's voice, and they keep, wanting to seem to focus on that bedroom, and they ain't letting out all of the details regarding that bedroom. Was she forced into that bedroom? These are just questions I want to pose. And that damn cousin, and all of the individuals that was in that house, the night that our sister, Dacara Thompson, died, that heard a female's voice and failed to intervene, they complicit in this thing, if you ask me as well. They need to be tried and charged up with something, you know what I mean? Now, the ICE, came through there and they grabbed up, somebody else, out of this house, and detained them. And they say this damn, Guatemalan Tether, the culprit, that's the one that unalived our sister. They previously had this damn Tether in custody, for a DEI, and they, failed to put an ICE detainer on him then. So if you ask me, they could have stopped all of these events, our sister being unalive, they could have stopped that from unfolding. You know what I mean? If they would have just, put a damn ICE detainer on this degenerate Tether. So I got the audio and the video of this nonsense, where though a Tether, unalived our 19-year-old FBA sister, you know what I mean, who had a bright and promising future ahead of her, and her lights, just been put out, and turned off by a no good rotten Tether. And this really makes me mad and gets my blood boiling, you know what I mean? And we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do, family. Fair use.
Police have confirmed the body found along Route 50 on Sunday afternoon in Anne Arundel County is in fact that of missing teen Dacara Thompson. Now, earlier this morning, police announced that she had been killed and a man has already been arrested and charged in connection with her murder. That suspect, according to Prince George's County Police, is in the United States illegally and is now subject to an ICE detainer. News 4's Darcy Spencer joins us live in...
They should have been put that ICE detainer on him when he previously had him in custody for that DUI. And none of these events would have unfolded if you ask me, but let's continue.
Word that man was taken into custody. It is the news. Her parents, her community were hoping they would not receive. Darcy Spencer, bring us up to speed with what we know.
And that's right, Erica. In this murder... Shaken this Bowie community. Many just finding out this news today, this morning, this afternoon from us as we ask people questions in the community. That killing allegedly happened in the house right here behind me. I spoke to a woman who lives here. She asked to not be shown on camera, but she says she had no idea a crime had happened inside the house and that this suspect is her cousin. It was inside this house on Cambridge Drive in Bowie, inside this bedroom that investigators say 19-year-old Dacara Thompson was murdered. Neighbors are stunned that the missing teen investigation led to Bowie so tragically.
I was hoping for the best, but it was just,
Yeah, I was hoping for the best too when I first seen the story. I see things, and a lot of times when I see them, I follow them to see where the story is going to end, before I decide to jump on it to make sure I got all the, details before I put out a story. But let's continue.
deeply saddened to hear.
But this is very disturbing to me, and it really makes me angry that this, Tether, done this to our sister. And we see this, an influx of these Tethers harming black women. And I got several, videos on that, particular topic and subject matter on my channel, family. It really gets me mad. You know what I mean? I wish they give, this degenerate Tether to us on the black grassroots and let us impose the punishment on him.
That it turned out this way, unfortunately.
The 19-year-old had been missing since August 22nd after she told her dad she was going to get gas and never returned. Surveillance video showed her walking away from her car about 1:30 a.m. in Langley Park the next day. Police say they found additional video showing her about 3 that morning on University Boulevard in Hyattsville.
For reasons still under investigation, it appears that Dacara willfully entered a vehicle being driven by Hugo Rene Hernandez.
See, they keep saying she willingly entered that vehicle. So I'm gonna need the news media outlets, to, stop withholding some of, what they know and put it out there to the public. You know what I mean? Because I don't see no sister, just entering the car with a stranger. Now, was she forced, into that car? That's could have been the case in all actuality, because I don't just see no sister entering no damn vehicle with a complete stranger, you know what I mean? But, she could have possibly been forced into that, vehicle. That's why I'm going to need the news media outlets to put out the real for real, you know what I mean? And stop being vague and, trying to withhold, things from the public. But let's continue.
Mendez, 35-year-old male out of Bowie, Maryland.
Police were able to track the SUV to the suspect's home and on Thursday took him into custody. Investigators determined through a search warrant Dacara was killed here. And police say Hernandez Mendez allegedly dumped her body.
And there was people, some of his other family members, them Tethers live 50, 60 deep in a home. So, people reported, that was in that house the night our sister got killed, that they heard a female's voice. So them people that failed to, intervene and, check and see what was going on, they just complicit in this thing as well. If you ask me, they're just as much so complicit. But let's continue.
In the grassy area off the highway, he's facing 1st and 2nd degree murder charges.
It is tough that we're at this point where the search is over and justice begins.
Police say they're still investigating how the two came into contact with one another. They're not saying how she.
That's what I'm saying. They got to put out all the logistics. They being very vague, had to keep, things from the public, you know what I mean? Release all of the details, because I ain't got our sister just, getting in a car with a complete and total stranger. That ain't something, that FBA sisters is going to do, by any means necessary.
She was killed. Back in the neighborhood, several residents told News 4 they didn't recognize the suspect from his photo. They say a family lives in the home and they're quiet.
It's very troubling because,
They say a family lives in a home and they quiet. For sure as hell they quiet because it's probably 50 and 60 Tethers, undocumented illegal immigrants living in that household, and they being, quiet as to not, bring no attention to themselves. But let's continue.
they've been over there for a couple of years.
And on another, news segment I watched, they took and, detained another man out of that house and, put him on an ICE detainer. But let's continue.
But just knowing that we have this magnitude, just hearing, this is a nice family community.
Several neighbors saw the police activity Thursday morning but had no idea it was connected to the Dacara Thompson case. Many were shaken up by the news that she was allegedly killed in a home right on their street.
It was really shocking to see the police from like 6:30 in the morning in front of the house, blocking the street. And to hear about what happened to that poor girl, I'm really sorry for the family, and I really keep them in my prayers.
Now, earlier today at a news conference, the chief said that there are no additional suspects, but this is an ongoing investigation. The suspect right now being held without bond. He's set to appear in court Monday afternoon. Back to you.
Darcy Spencer.
But in closing, family, I'm gonna need the news media outlets, to give out some more details, as to just what all happened, all of the intricate details, regarding our sister's death, because this got me mad. This is a total and, complete bunch of nonsense. You know what I mean? And I want to say, R.I.P to, my sister Dacara, Thompson, and my condolences goes out to her friends and family, but especially her parents, who were, very, adamant about, getting out there and, making sure that the public knew that their daughter was missing. They was going out there, standing on business, knocking on doors, being very proactive in their daughter's investigation. And, this, probably crushes their spirit, to hear that their daughter, was unalived in, such a horrific manner by this tether. You know what I mean? And that's something else that we're going to, need the news media outlets to put out there. How was our sister unalived? Because they being very tight-lipped about the whole thing. And I want to say, my condolences to her friends and family, but I know her parents is going through it because they was out there on the front lines, speaking up and advocating for their daughter, you know what I mean? And I think the punishment that should be imposed to this no good tether, is they give them to us on the black grassroots, to make sure that, we can, give out a punishment to this damn no good tether that's, fitting of the crime he committed. Just my thoughts on the matter, but my condolences goes out, to our sister Dacara Thompson's friends and family. Peace.